Welcome back to the Rich Equation, the Real Jason Duncan. Pleasure to have you, brother.
Always good to see you, Ash. Always good to see you.
Always good to see you. You know, it's really funny, our journeys, how they've crossed. I sent you a little screenshot that somehow we connected on Instagram over a year and a half ago. And I think we did our first podcast together. I think it was on my show, and you were in a RV at a RV traveling Florida, I think, right next to the ocean. And you told your wife, hey, hon, I'm going to go record a podcast really quick. I'll be right back. And then came back on the beach.
That's right.
And then I did your podcast shortly after that. And I have a picture of us because you're so kind enough to send a little memento when you have guests. I have it right in my office. And then we had the pleasure of doing an epic men's trip together in Costa Rica last month. So our journey is weirdly long and deep, and it's continuing to flourish. So I'm just really excited that you're back and that we can share more knowledge from you and we can go deeper today. So welcome.
Thanks, man. It's Instagram is such a wonderful social media platform. To me, it's the best one. Facebook is just assholes. You got Twitter. Everybody thinks that they're always right and they're always being mean to each other. LinkedIn is people trying to sell you stuff all the time, it seems like. And yet Instagram, here's this wonderful little place where people just like to connect. Like they post cool pictures of them and their wives doing yoga, which you posted with your wife today, I saw. Or they're posting, pictures of things that they're doing together, or there's videos. I love reels. And so I love Instagram. I've made so many good connections and friendships through Instagram. It's legit.
It really is legit. And I don't think people quite understand how authentically you can meet with people and connect with people. And, for me, as big as you are and as many connections as you are and following you have, and you've been doing this for a few more years, like I was, when the Real Jason Duncan responded to me willing to do my podcast, I was like, what? So it's really cool. People are real and they're authentic and they're really willing to connect. So I love social media for that as well. If you use the tool properly.
Indeed. Yep.
So you just launched a book. Tell us about the book. Tell us about the Exeter Club, and tell us about what's going on.
Well, so yes, my book, Exit Without Exiting, just hit the shelves a couple of weeks ago and is now officially an international #1 bestseller in several categories, thanks to people like you, because you bought books from me. But this has been a year's journey of writing, but it was based on a decade of experience and what I went through as an entrepreneur. I started a business as an unemployed school teacher back in 2010 and built that to significant status. And but I had built a kind of a prison for myself. And I had built a business that was non-exitable. I couldn't get out of it because I was the center of it. And so I figured a way out without selling the business, which I call Exit Without Exiting. And after I did it, everybody was like, Jason, how'd you do that? And so people started asking me to coach them and teach them. And since I am a teacher and coaching scratches that itch, I thought, why don't I just start a coaching program around this? And then eventually the coaches I hired to coach me said, Jason, you need to put this in a book. And so in January of 22, I made the decision to write the book, and then we just finished it and published it, and it came out March 3rd of 23. So it's been a great journey.
Tell me about the journey of actually writing the book, because this is pre-Chat GPT. This is not a computer generated book. This is probably one of the last books that's actually written by a human being. But tell me about the journey.
That is so true, man, because I was thinking about that today. I use Chat GPT every single day of my life, and I'm not even kidding. I use it for everything. But I was just thinking about that, and you said it. It's like, this is probably one of the last books ever written without Chat GPT. Like this is like the OG, this is original, the OG.
It's the
because
OG.
had I had Chat GPT, this book would have been written a lot sooner.
It's true. It's so true. I just made an announcement to my staff yesterday that if you don't start using ChatGPT or learning how to use ChatGPT, you're going to be less valuable at least a year from now. And the amount of speed in which it's taking, I think there's like 100 million people last time I looked a couple days ago, 100 million people in 3 months using a software
every day.
It's just mind blowing, right? So anyways, not to get off track, and we could probably talk about that wormhole in a minute, but yeah, tell me about the journey of writing the book. Like what showed up naturally for you? What was the biggest pain? Was it easy to come up with the narrative or the storyline or the topics? I've leafed through it. I'll admit I haven't read it yet, but.
Well, I will. I got 2 Chat GPT things, and then we'll go back to your question. So number one, and this is going to be hilarious. So I write a newsletter every single week, and I send it out to all my subscribers. And so my newsletter on Wednesdays is it's educational content. I try to really give something of value, and it's usually around 1,000 words, and it's easy to read, something quick, and it has a call to action if there happens to be some call to action at the bottom, and that's it. Well, this time I had my intern with me yesterday when I was working on this, and I was showing him how to use Chat GPT. He didn't really know how to use it, and I said, "Here's what you could do." So I took what I wrote, popped it in Chat GPT, and I said, "Clean this up, make it a little bit more interesting," and it did, and so it was cool. And that's what I was going to put in there. And he started asking questions about what else you could do with it, and I said, "Well, you could actually make it talk in a non-AI sort of way." So I actually put it back in there, and I said, "Rewrite this in a way non-typical of AI." And it did that, and it changed some of the phrasing, which was cool. And I said, "You can actually write it in just about anybody's voice." And I said, "Watch this." And I told it, I said, I put in the data, and I said, "Rewrite this in the voice of Chris Rock." And it did. And then when I read it out loud, I'm laughing because I'm trying to do a Chris Rock impression
while you're doing it.
And so this is a true story. So tomorrow's newsletter that's going out is, I actually put a picture of Chris Rock in there, and I say, "I got a message for everybody from Chris Rock." And then I of course I put it in there, and at the bottom I say, "Well, I wrote it, and then I had Chat GPT do this thing." So I think that's going to be hilarious when people read it. But also, I'm going to put out a call to your audience. If anybody out there considers himself an expert in Chat GPT, I want you to reach out to me. And here's why: because I do a live webinar series twice a month where I bring in an expert on some topic, and we do this thing. And I'm currently looking for a Chat GPT expert. I'm going through Instagram right now trying to find people, and I'm not having a ton of luck because it's so new. I can find somebody who says they know a lot, but they got 300 followers. I'm like, well, how much do you know if you only have 300 followers, on that topic? So anyway, if you are a listener and you're a Chat GPT expert, look up the Real Jason Duncan on Instagram. Send me a message. Say you heard me on Ash's show, The Rich Equation, and we'll talk about you being on my show.
I just asked it to do a simulated org chart, and it wrote a code, and it actually built an org chart for a 50-person company. I put things into charts with ChatGPT. You know, it has a chart feature.
Yes. And it's got the ChatGPT 4 is coming out soon, and it'll be able to analyze visuals and produce images. So we're just on the cutting edge of this. I wrote a company, like you do, like a newsletter. I wrote a company update, which normally I spend like 2 hours creating. And I just put the top 7 or 8 topics of what's going on with the business. And I said, "Here, write me a company newsletter." Or a company update. And I'm going to send that out saying, "Hey team, this is our company update. By the way, this was written by ChatGPT." Because I feel like from a business perspective and a life perspective, it's such a valuable tool that if you're not using, you're wasting time. You're wasting energy. Yep.
And then people start to ask a question of critical thinking, which is a whole nother topic.
Yeah. Well, my wife says, "Well, aren't you cheating?" I said, "No, if I had a physical assistant sitting right here across the desk for me, and I said, 'Hey, I need you to write the newsletter for tomorrow. Here are the top 5 things I want to talk about. Go.' Like, that's not cheating. I assigned it to somebody to do on my behalf. I will proof it and I'll send it out. Now I'm just using the computer to do that."
Absolutely.
Well, so back to your question. So the process of writing the book,
no, let's stay on ChatGPT. Sorry, right. I'm going to interrupt you. Let's go, because you're a teacher. So let's actually lean into this, because if we're going to go there, we might as well go there. I agree with you. From a critical thinking, you still, as a human, with your ingenuity, your creativity, you still have to provide it prompts. You still have to learn how to think, right? Think about your thinking, and then feed it to the computer, and then it regurgitates something, and then you iterate it and you adjust it. There's a lot of conversation going on around school, about students doing this? What is your perspective about, what is your advice or perspective about people that often when these tools exist, they learn how to misuse them, right?
Yeah.
They don't do the hard work. They let the computer do the hard work. Give me your perspective on that.
So I think education in general is set up wrong. I think we are putting kids through a system that teaches them to be good employees, good test takers, and to do their work independently and to not rely on other people's input. We call it cheating. Now, I realize that there is a thing called cheating when you're supposed to do it yourself and then you use somebody else's work and call it your own. That in fact that's an integrity issue. So I'm not speaking of that. But our school systems are developing employees. That's all they're doing. They're developing employees. Now, interestingly enough, the government system of school that develops employees then taxes employees at the highest rate. Just want everybody to pay attention to that. So our whole government system puts you through a school system that makes you an employee. And then when you become an employee, it taxes you at the highest rate because people like Ash and me don't pay as much tax as you do as an employee. So they reward us for escaping the matrix and employing you to work for us, and you pay the higher amount of taxes. So that's our whole system, and it wasn't by accident.
That's not by accident.
Without all that as the background, I was a school teacher, and I was a really, really good school teacher. And I didn't follow the normal rules of teaching school. And I had 11 pages of standards that I was supposed to teach as an 8th grade American history teacher in the state of Tennessee. And did I hit all those standards? No. Did my students perform really, really well in tests? Yes. As a matter of fact, they performed the highest in the county. Now, what separates me from all these other teachers is because I'm not trying to make them good employees. So if I'm a teacher today with Chat GPT, what do I do with that? How do I deal with my students using Chat GPT? I would say, go use it. That is now a tool. Like back when calculators were invented, people didn't want students to use calculators. Now we have kids have to buy a $500 calculator to get through a class. Like calculators are a tool that are used. The internet is now a research tool. I mean, back before that, we had Encyclopedia Britannica and World Book. You remember those? I mean, was that cheating to go pull out the D volume to look up dogs? No, that was doing research. So Chat GPT is now another form of research. Now, where it comes down to the problems is if you're trying to learn a specific skill like coding or like creative writing, how are teachers going to handle that? And I'd say that writing assignments now are going to have to be live in person on paper in a classroom. You can't send a kid home and tell them to come back with a typed 12-page paper on something and expect that to give some sort of meaningful output to demonstrate their capacity that they have learned something, because they're going to cheat, if we call it cheating, and they're going to use Chat GPT. You're going to have to get that creative writing and that special skills are going to have to be done live in the classroom to see, are they indicating that they've learned something? So I think the instructional model is going to have to be changed for teachers because our world's changing really, really fast. When I taught school, cell phones were just becoming in vogue for kids that age. I was teaching 13 and 14-year-old kids. Most kids didn't have phones in 2008, 9, 10. They didn't have them. Now everybody has them. So phones are making schools different. The internet's making schools different, and ChatGPT is going to have a huge impact.
I think it's really funny how this has become so controversial because people really don't know what to do with it. And often kids, because they're young, don't know the repercussions of the short-term behaviors on long-term effects. But me personally, I'm not that concerned. I think over time it'll end up figuring itself out, to like you just said, school's whole curriculum, the grading systems, the way that the system is built. It's not in alignment with real learning. And so you could use ChatGPT to pass a test or get a grade, but the moment you graduate high school, the moment you finish college, the real world doesn't give a shit. The real world is going to kick your butt. So I think slowly we'll figure out how to focus more on learning, focus more on critical thinking, and less about just the output of work, right? Because now if you have tools to increase the productivity and the performance of somebody's output, then why are we not using them? It's like, it's a tool just like a hammer. You're going to punish somebody that does not use a hammer? They don't have no chance. But you have to know how to use a hammer. So it's sort of it's new age industrialism, right?
Well, I think it was Elon Musk was the one who said it, that if you come work for him and he asks for some sort of report on something, he wants it in as concise as possible. He doesn't need a 12-page report. He wants it as concise as possible. But yet in high schools, in English literature classes, when they're telling people to write reports on things, they're wanting 12, 15, 20-page reports. I remember when I was a senior in high school, I think my senior project was a 15-page paper, double spaced,
Yes.
single-sided 10-point font. Why? Now, you could argue from a pedagogical standpoint, like there is a reason for doing that much work and research, but in today's world, that's not necessary. I mean, what was that? What was the math thing with the beads that slid back and forth? There's a word, I forget what that's called. But
I know what you're talking about.
Before that, all math was done on a pen with a pencil or an ink pen or a quill pen on parchment. And then some guy came up with this to make it quicker and faster. And then from that, we go to calculators, and from calculators, we go to supercomputers, and supercomputers would go to regular computers. And now we have cell phones that do everything. We need to teach these kids how to use the tools that are available to them. Now, we can't, and this is where teachers are really screw up, is we can't remove the importance of teaching kids how to think.
Yes.
Like Chat GPT doesn't think for me, but I can abuse it to where somebody asks me a question, I type it in, and whatever it says, okay, do this. Like, that's not the way you're supposed to use it. I mean, we all forget, I think in this Chat GPT conversation, is that humans are behind this. This is not some evolution of a computer that somehow got knocked off a desk onto a paperclip and a magnet and turned into Chat GPT. Like, that's not what happened. Like, humans sat down and figured this out, and humans will continue to figure it out. And AI will never be as good as the brain that God created inside us. We are the ones that are directing this, so we should also use it for our benefit as well.
This is why I'm loving the series that we're doing on the podcast of like second interviews. Because we just did a 15-minute tangent on something because we felt like talking about it. And you're able to go deeper with people because you don't have to introduce them and start all over with their story. We can go deep into topics that are real. I love it.
So your assistant, AJ, just said it's an abacus. That's what that tool is.
The abacus, the measure, right.
Yes.
Right.
Good job, AJ.
If you want to still talk about the book, we can. Tell me about the journey of the book, because and I'd love to ask you a poignant question. Do you think that writing a book today is still relevant in the world of ChatGPT and how fast people are consuming content? Your book is having incredible success. It just launched last week or the week before too. So I was reading something about that too, about like the utility of books today. I'm still an avid book reader. You can see all the books. And I think I bought like 30 books of yours to distribute to all my friends. But I'd love to get your perspective on that. Just tell me about the journey of writing the book.
Well, for me, the when you run into an author, and I'm going to pause or suspend reality for the moment because now I am one. But like, this is a conversation I would have had 3 months ago with somebody. If you run into somebody who's an author, all of a sudden that person is in a different, like, we all seem to think, oh, it's different. You just think about them different. And for me, when I started my podcast, I was receiving some of those same accolades, but not quite the same. So as a podcaster, and you experience this too, Ash, because you've got a podcast, but when you're a podcaster, people, oh, you have a podcast, but it's not quite being an author. So podcasters are coming up, like in terms of the way the general public sees someone. So I've had a podcast for quite some time now. I'm on 140 something episodes. We started approximately the same time, I think. But now that I'm an author, there is a little bit of difference. Like, oh, you're an author now. Because now I had a lady call me today, and I put in my email signature about my book, and she called me off my email signature. We're working on this deal together. She goes, oh, and by the way, I can't wait to read your book. I just bought it, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Nobody, I mean, not nobody, but not very many people would take the moment to go, I can't wait to listen to your podcast. So there's a little different. When you're an author, it's a little different. So to your second part of that question, is it still a relevant media? Is there still an importance? Yeah, 100%, because what Chat GPT can't do. I can feed it input. It can give me some of this stuff, but it doesn't have the experience I have. It doesn't know how to look around a corner and see the trouble that's going to come down the pike, where I can see it as the author. I can write that story in a way that Chat GPT cannot, at least today. I mean, things may change 10 years from now. We don't know how much better this thing is going to get. But the process of writing that book for me was I wanted to have the book because I wanted to be I wanted to be seen as the expert in that area. And of course, I feel like I am the expert in that area. I wanted to write it in 4 months because I had a TED Talk coming up. And I said, I want to be done by this date so that I can release it and talk about it at the TED Talk. And they were like, no problem. Well, that was at the end of April last year. And here we are in March of this year. It just now came out. I think I could have written one that fast and I could have put it out there, but it wouldn't have been nearly as good, because about 6 months into my process, I decided that I didn't just want my book to be didactic, just teaching point after point after point. I wanted it to be a story. So I went back and overlaid over the whole book 3 stories of 3 different characters to illustrate the points of Edward and Cheryl and James were the 3 characters. And I wanted to tell those stories in a way that was meaningful and that people could understand. And I even had one guy just text me. I knew he was reading the book. I didn't know where or how far he had been, but he just texted me, "Poor Edward," and a smile and a frowny face. And that told me he was reading the book. He knew the story. He knew what Edward was going through. So I think that extra 6 months of writing the book for me made it worth it, and perhaps will continue to be the reason why it continues to grow and be a big time seller.
You're a great storyteller, so I'm glad you took that spin.
Well, thank you.
You should have used maybe one ethnic name, but either way, it's all good.
James, you don't know where James comes from. James could be anything.
We just went on an epic trip to Costa Rica together.
Yeah, we did. Epic is a good description.
I don't know. I don't talk about this that publicly, but we hosted 10 guys in Costa Rica. I asked Jason to co-host it with me, and we went deep on a 5-day journey with almost complete strangers. Tell me about the trip for you and what you experienced and what you were surprised about, and what were some of the most profound lessons.
So
and I'm going to share mine from you, because you shared a lot of great lessons, and I want you to go deeper there, but you go first.
Well, I will say to plug the trips for sure, I would say this. If Ash reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I want you to come on this trip," you have to go on the trip. Like that, this is I don't, he's still working on building this as a concept to push out, but I'm speaking to you, Mr. Listener, guys. You need to take this trip. You need to reach out to him. You need to figure out what you can do to get involved and go to it, because they're really, really that good. And the community built around this, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, is the community that was built around it. Because these are, for the most part, strangers. Because there was some familiarity between a couple of guys, but we were stuck's not the right word, but like we were stuck together for 5 days in this beautiful home, and we got to do all these great things and go on these wonderful excursions and experiences. It was nonstop, and it was fantastic. The setting was beautiful. The accommodations were beautiful. The food was phenomenal. I mean, the chef did a great job. The excursions that we went on were memorable and exciting. We did things I would probably not do. Like on my own, I wouldn't go surfing. I don't care anything about it, but that was fun. And now I can say that I did it. So I think the overall experience was really, really meaningful. And I'm very grateful that I was able to be a part of it.
What were you surprised about?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there was anything that really surprised me. One of the things that's changed in my life over the last, say, 20 years is my expectations have kind of, I wouldn't say diminished, but I've learned to temper them significantly. So I knew
your expectations.
Yeah. So I was going to be, I thought going to this was going to be awesome. But I didn't walk into it thinking X is going to happen or Y is going to happen or Z is going to happen. So when I got there, I was really open for whatever. And, my bag didn't arrive for a whole 24 hours. So I was there with just the clothes on my back the first day. And, but nevertheless, I still had a fantastic time. I mean,
Yeah.
So I don't know that there was any significant surprises, but I really, really enjoyed meeting you in person. We'd never met in person until we were in the parking lot of that place right down the street from the airport when the guy picked me up and dropped me off, So, it was really, really good way to kick off the year for me.
I love it. What I really noticed is the community that gets built and how quickly people start to trust each other and support each other and communicate openly. I mean, it becomes sort of tribal in that way. And I've loved being able to do it and host it. It's a ton of work, but it's totally worth it.
Well, you did a great job.
Yeah. So I asked you to do, and maybe we can elaborate on this a little bit. I asked you to do a couple of sessions with the guys during the co-hosting, and we talked a lot about purpose. There's a few different topics we talked about, actually. You're like this encyclopedia of life laws, and you can share as many laws as you want on the podcast. I think we had a couple of guys ask me, okay, Jason, where do we find the book of laws? Like, you have to sign up with me. But, you talked about delegation. I loved your concept about delegation, but really what was super profound was this framework of purpose. And I think you had just drawn it up either on the way there, it just kind of flowed right through you, of like this framework of finding purpose in life and how all the things in our life can sort of be pointed towards this one thing. And if all of those things are not pointing to it, then it's really not quite yet our purpose. And then there was another profound statement that you made that, life is all about impact and influence, and that you can't necessarily have influence unless you have financial resources. And I think that, I guess I knew that before, but it never really hit me so specifically that, making money and building wealth and having businesses and all that is also a tool. It doesn't have to be abandoned to go find a purpose that somehow is not aligned with that. There is a need to also build financial resources in order for you to have impact and influence. And then ultimately that drives to your legacy. So I don't know if you want to talk about that framework a little bit, but I thought it was super powerful. I know you walk through this with your members and stuff like that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, the whole idea of purpose for me is an interesting and personal thing because, I spent 13 years in vocational pastoral ministry, and then I spent 4 years as a school teacher, and then I became an entrepreneur. And so I've got these three interesting legs to the stool of my life upon which my life is built. I got these years in ministry and a bachelor's degree in ministry. Then I've got these years in teaching with a master's degree in teaching. And then I've got these decade plus of experience of running businesses. Yet for most of that time, I didn't know why I was here, nor was I interested in finding out. It wasn't that I was obstinate against finding out, as I just was ignorant to the fact that you should probably be clued in on why you're here on earth. So when I exited my business in 2020 to exit without exiting, which is what my book is about, and I tell a little bit of my story in there, of course, but when I did that, there was no other thing I was running towards. I just knew that there was a reason I wasn't supposed to be running that business every day, that there was some other reason I was supposed to be on earth. At the time, I didn't even realize to call that purpose. But the first 4 months after me stepping down from the CEO role was very difficult in terms of, I went through an identity crisis. I'd introduced myself as the president and CEO of Energy Lighting Services for a decade. And now what do I say? And, I'd explaining to somebody, because I didn't even know what exit without exiting was at the time. I didn't even have
you didn't have a name for it.
I didn't have a name for it.
Right.
And so I hired a coach and a mentor, and we went through that together. And that's the value of hiring a coach and a mentor, because you don't know what you don't know. And he helped me figure that out. And then ultimately I was able to discover my purpose. And my purpose is to use my gifts of teaching and leadership to help other people discover their purpose and get the results that they want out of life. That's it. I will do that for the rest of my life. I now know why I'm here. How I how I exercise that, of course, is going to be significantly different from decade to decade, because, I'm in my 40s now, and right now I'm a business coach. I'm an author, I'm a podcaster. I lead a mastermind. I'm a speaker. That's how I'm exercising this now. But who knows, in my 50s, I might be running a nonprofit and I'm working with my team to do it. And I'm still exercising my gifts of teaching and leadership to deliver the results that people want and to help them find their purpose. So once you discover your purpose, life changes, because now it's no longer tedious activities in pursuit of a dollar. Now I'm actually doing what I'm here for, and the dollars will come. The dollars will follow. And so for years, I've been working on, for the last several years, how do I demonstrate and teach this in a concept in a way that makes sense? And so I took the concept of ikigai, which is a Japanese concept about essence and fullness of life and reason for being. And I kind of meshed that in with what one of my coaches taught me years ago about what it means to your superpower, what you're really here for. And then I put it through the framework of the Real Jason Duncan's life and experience. How did I figure mine out? And I came up with a framework. And frankly, it's the visuals are very different than what I share with you guys on the retreat, because I just drew that on the airplane trying to figure it out. And once I got feedback from you guys and went through it again, it's like, oh, okay, there would be a better way to explain it. So now I have even a better way to explain it. And so now I've even got a 40-day course that I do with students who want to learn their purpose. And it's working out really, really well and being very well received.
Yeah, and it's a process, right? We went through it sort of quickly in an hour and a half. But I remember that everyone was kind of craving more time to spend time on this. So I'm glad you've launched a course about it, because it is a process. It's an exercise of almost breaking patterns of thinking of why we do what we do and what we think we're meant to do this. Well, how does that interact with this? And I want to do this, but I'm actually doing this. And so framework was really helpful. I've spent time on it since we've come back. And you have a magic trick to help people find this. Because I think when you find it yourself, it's pretty clear that you have it, right? And you speak from a place of power.
Yeah, I think it's one, and that's one of the words, right? It's power. Is that, do you have the power to do this thing? And so power is not muscle and might. It's just the ability to accomplish something. And so I've got the power to teach people how to discover their purpose, because I figured mine out and I'm living in the center of it. Now, that doesn't mean every day is awesome and amazing and enjoyable. There are still days that suck. There's still days, but because I have purpose, I'm able to come back to the center much more quickly.
Let's talk about, we met a year ago, and one of the things I'm really interested in doing with people the second time around is like, okay, we've met a year ago. People kind of know your story by now, or they should. Otherwise, go back to his first episode. But like over the last year, besides the book, you spent a lot of time traveling. You love riding motorcycles. You're a big avid RVer. Although I think I've seen you RV less this year. I'm not sure. You have. But yeah, you've been RVing a little less. But like you have a good balance of personal time. I think the kids are a little bit older now. What are some of the biggest changes or lessons you've learned in the last year and how you've adapted their life? Your message is getting more clear for you, tools in which you share that message. So I guess just more broad stroke, and we can go anywhere you want.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I think in all of us, no matter what your furniture, that's kind of your base business. All of us have different things, whether it's software or whether it's product-based or service-based, whatever it happens to be. It could be social, it could be technological, it could be online, offline. I mean, all of us, we have to go through the stages of discovery. The law of discovery teaches us that, what we discover on our own, we learn much better and more quickly than things that we're taught. So as a teacher and a coach, I'm not immune to that either. Like I have to learn how to be a teacher and a coach and a speaker, just like anybody else have to learn how to make furniture or learn how to be a cook or a chef. You got to go through that process. And the first few meals you create as a chef are going to not be very good. The first few pieces of furniture you build on your own are probably not going to be very good. Well, the first year or so of coaching, you're probably not going to be that great at it. And so for over this last year or so, I think my skills have developed significantly. I think my confidence has developed significantly. The methodologies have tweaked and tweaked and tweaked over time. But I think one of the things that all of us need to remember is that, there is this thing about being congruent. And sometimes we go and we read books and we go listen to podcasts or we go to the conferences and the people are giving good advice, but it's not your advice. It's not for you. Tony Robbins gives great advice, and so does Dean Graziosi, so does Russell Brunson, so does Ash, so does Jason. Like, we all give good advice, but our advice is for a specific person or a specific time. And a lot of us go and we take all this advice and it's not congruent. And we hear Grant Cardone say one thing, we hear somebody say something else, and we hear Robert Kiyosaki say something, and we hear Dave Ramsey say something, and those are all good pieces of advice, and they've all built great legacies on their advice, but they're not oftentimes congruent to the person's situation. So what we have to do, and this is what I've been trying to figure out over the last year since we talked last, is how do I take all this information that I've been receiving about how to do it, how to be a coach, how to be a speaker, how to be an author, how to be a podcaster, and then my experiences as an entrepreneur, how do I pull all that together in a way that's congruent? So I had a coach I hired at the end of the year last year.
For the listener, you mean for the listener, for the person you're coaching, or for you personally?
For me personally,
Both.
I mean,
Okay.
I've had to go through that as well because, I hired a coach at the end of the last year. I'm still working with to this day, but one of his methods was you got to stop doing live coaching. That's not exactly the way he said it. So I'm not even gonna say who it is because I don't want to throw him under the bus, but you got to stop doing live coaching. You got to do online courses because you can scale that. Okay. That makes complete sense. Like, there's no reason to go, no, that's wrong. But as I've committed to that, I haven't done a live course until I just started one 2 weeks ago with my 40 days to find your true purpose, but I haven't done one since November. And I thought, well, wait, I miss it. So I had another mindset coach I was working with, and I didn't even know to explain what I was missing, but she was really good at asking the right questions. And she said, well, it sounds to me like you're missing that outlet of teaching, like live
The
interaction
one-on-one
with students.
interaction, right?
And I said, yeah, I miss it. She goes, well, you need to go back to that. And I said, yeah, but what about and so the congruent, you got to be better. We all have to be better at making the messages be congruent. So if you want to go read Robert Kiyosaki, who I think is phenomenal on finances, everything else, maybe not, I don't know, but finance is 100% great. If you want to go read Grant Cardone on real estate investing, that's great. But just make sure that you're not getting two alternate pieces of information that are both good, but when you bring them together, they cause dissonance. They cause, like, this doesn't make sense. And I'm certainly not insinuating that Cardone and Kiyosaki are at odds. I'm not saying that, but you just got to be better at that. And that's, I think, what I've been better at over the last year is I'm figuring out how to filter the content that I'm receiving through books, podcasts, et cetera, and making sure I throw it out if it's not congruent. And when I throw it out, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying it's not congruent with me. Like, this is not where I'm at. It doesn't mean I'm better. It doesn't mean they're better. It just means that's not where I'm at. So,
Great
for whatever it's
lesson.
worth, that's what I've learned.
I mean, you know me, and I'm victim to that too. There's a lot of information out there. We can digest a lot of information. Everyone's got an opinion about everything. That's a really wise framework of what's really incongruent and requires you to really think about where are you at and what are you trying to achieve, and let's start there.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
it's like anything else. So I've got a firm that I work with, Story, who does a lot of my social media stuff, and I'm an affiliate with them. They're one of my sponsors on my podcast, and they do great. I also have a VA in the Philippines who does a lot of my stuff, and she's fantastic. They do things a little different, but I can use both of them at the same time, and they're congruent. Like, her stuff looks like their stuff looks like her stuff, and it works for me. But I've got an email or an Instagram DM from somebody every day. I can do yours better. I can do yours better. And I'm sure, like, I get it, that you might be able to do it better. Or people trying to do my podcast. Hey, I can cut up your podcast and make social content, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that's great. These people are fantastic at what they do, but it's not congruent with where I am right now. So I can't accept it. We have to look at data and information in the same way. So if you're just listening to a free piece of data off YouTube, or a free piece of data off of a podcast somewhere, or a free piece of data even out of a book like my book, you got to make sure it's fitting with where you are right now, because it's all good information, and for the most part, it's all going to be accurate information. But if it doesn't fit with where you are today, you've got to learn to filter that thing out.
I want you to talk about this concept of influence. You know, as a furniture business owner, I manufacture hotel furniture. I have a lot of friends who are sort of Neanderthal CEOs running different types of businesses. Very few of them are online and have any kind of social presence as a personality, let's say, right? And so when I started doing the podcast, it was really foreign to like my ecosystem of friends, let's call it, right? And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to build a digital reputation that I felt like I had a good face-to-face personal reputation, but I was seeing that the world was moving towards a direction where your digital reputation was just as important, and it had the ability for you to scale in a way that your personal reputation perhaps couldn't. It also allowed you to build trust with people that have never met you much more rapidly. So frankly speaking, I was experimenting, and I'm kind of still experimenting.
Never stops.
But, right? Yeah, we're all still experimenting. But I think that I found a lot of success in that. And I'd love you to explain this whole medium of digital reputation and influence and why it's so important. Because even for you, like, 5 years ago, would you have ever imagined that you would have had a podcast and you would have been a speaker and you would have used social media in the way that you use it today to build a brand called the Real Jason Duncan, which you yourself is the brand, not the company, not some, title of CEO. You are the brand, you are the company. And I think that the way that people think and act and behave is always that people buy products from people, not from companies. So I'd love you to talk about that and your experience in that. And you've done a really great job of building your brand. And I mean that. So I think there's a lot of people that don't think about this in terms of building a digital reputation, because I can never get on social media. I mean, it's not easy for sure.
No.
But just the importance of this influence and why it's so important.
It's harder than everybody talks about.
Yes.
Having influence, and I'd be happy to talk a little bit deeper about that, but specifically online and social influence as a social media influencer, or whatever the heck that means, that's so much harder than people think. These people that are sending you DMs and emails and they're saying, hey, I took my client from 20 grand a month to 200 grand a month in 60 days with social media content. No, you didn't. There's something else happened and you were along for the ride. Like, I'm not saying you didn't contribute to it, but you didn't do that. Because if that could happen, everybody would do it. Everybody would do it. I've been on Instagram. I think I got a notification reminder that I joined in 16. I thought I joined in 18. It's not been that long in my brain. And I've been, this is how you found me. Like, I post every day and I post really good content. Now, my content's better today than it was 2 years ago. And it was better 2 years ago than it was 2 years before that. I mean, it gets significantly better over time. But I have very good social media presence, and that's not just me saying it. You said it. I mean, I've got people tell me that all the time. But you know what? It doesn't translate directly into dollars, because it doesn't happen that way. So these people that are saying, I can make you an influencer, I can just cut up your podcast and you'll make 100 grand a month starting in 90 days. No, you won't. That it doesn't work that way. Because if it did, I would have already done it. Now, am I making money because of my ability to influence people and my social media presence? Sure, I am, but it's not directly. The weirdest thing that's happened to me recently on money, and I don't know if this is even true, but I think it's a funny story, is that my bookkeeper over the last 2 months has noticed that I'm getting deposits from Facebook. Like, it's not much, less than a couple $100, but he's like, where's this coming from? And I said, I have no idea. And he goes, are you selling something on Marketplace? I mean, yeah, but they wouldn't deposit my business account. And so the only thing any of us can think of is that I signed up for Reels, like their monetization. That even may be true, but why is Facebook giving me money? I don't know. But there's no direct money in this, at least not the easy way. So
why do it?
Why do it is because it is required. So go back to the days of the Yellow Pages. So I'm a little bit older than you. So I don't know if you remember that.
I know the Yellow Pages.
But the Yellow Pages, 40 years ago, if you didn't have your ad in the Yellow Pages, you weren't in business because nobody would know you existed. Now, did that ad, the Yellow Pages, directly send you dollars? No, but it made people aware of who you were and gave them the option to reach out to you. And then when they needed you, you came and you fixed their air conditioner, whatever you were doing, you fixed it. Well, 25 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had a door-to-door outside salesperson going out knocking on doors, because that's how people became aware, because they don't look at the Yellow Pages anymore. And then maybe 15, 20 years ago was the websites. We had to have a website. Again, it was so that people could validate, are you actually who you say you are? And they could look you up and validate information. Well, today, social media has become that thing, and doing social media content is what makes people aware of you. Now, are people succeeding in spite of the fact that they're not on social media? Yes, but that is an exception to the rule. That is not the norm. That is not the norm. I mean, did people succeed not having a Yellow Pages ad back in the 70s? Sure, but it wasn't the norm. So today, here we are. We've got this social media opportunities, these platforms, and we need to be on them and to use them to our benefit and to the benefit of the people who are consuming the content, because it's not just a pitch fest. I make very few calls to action in my pitches these days.
It's hard. Few. Yeah, you have to just keep giving.
Yes. And so, but when I started, I was, every time I did one, hey man, reach out to me. We got LED lights that we need to sell you, because I was doing it for my lighting company. And you know how many people called me? Zero. Like, it's just, you got to figure this out. So why do it is because it's something that has to be done. You just have to do it. I mean, there's so many why do it anyways. You just have to, you just got to do it. But there are the stages of influence we all go through, whether it's online or otherwise, but influence is where we make impact. And I am about making impact. I'm not about just making a little splash of the pond. I want to do a cannonball into the deep end. I want the world to get wet. I want them to know that I existed, not for the purpose of propping me up, but for my purpose of seeing 100,000 entrepreneurs set free from the ironic prison of entrepreneurship. For me, helping 10,000 people escape poverty and mediocrity through the vehicle of entrepreneurship. That takes impact. That takes influence. And I want to do it, and I got to do it this way.
I love this shit. Love it. Tell us about the mastermind. How do people follow you? I mean, we'll put all the links in, but just give people an update on how they can connect with you.
Well, so the mastermind, I started this at the end of 2021. It's called the Exeter Club. And it is a mastermind designed exclusively for entrepreneurs who, one of two different kinds of entrepreneurs. The first kind is someone who's trapped in their business and really doesn't know the way out, and they just want to figure it out, and they want to go to that next big adventure, and they just need somebody to help them figure it out. The other kind is the entrepreneur who's killing it, but is kind of realizes that they've reached that ceiling, that there's a cap, because they put in all the hours, they put in all the time, and they've reached the top of what they could accomplish, and they need a mastermind of men to help them figure out how to reach that next level. And that's what we do. So we have guys in the group that are doing, $1 million or maybe even a little less in revenue. And then we have guys that are doing 8 figures. I even have guys 9 figures. Right? I mean, these are high level dudes that are doing phenomenal things. Some people have already sold their businesses and they're just looking for the next big adventure. Some people are on the very, first 5 or 6 years of being in their business. No matter what it is, the Exeter Club is designed to do 3 things. Number 1, to get you where you want to go as an individual, as a business owner, as a family man. That's it. Number 2 is gives you a way to invest together, because we invest together. We have a syndication to do that together. We're in the process. As a matter of fact, I just got a text on my phone from our real estate agent. We're looking to buy an Airbnb together and have long-term passive income together. And then the third thing is that we're going to go and do that vision that I just explained. We're going to together help 100,000 entrepreneurs get out of the prison of entrepreneurship. We're going to help 10,000 people get out of poverty and mediocrity, because we're going to start a nonprofit. One of my things this year, early early 20 or this year, early 24, we're going to officially start a nonprofit, and we're going to be changing the legacy of people all over the world.
This guy's making a cannonball splash. He's going to get everybody wet. Gotta watch him. Gotta watch this guy. The real Jason Duncan. Any final words?
Well, if any of this resonated with you, listener, go to my website or any of my social medias. You can find me at The Real Jason Duncan, and go pick up a copy of the book. The book is like all the secrets are in the book. You read the book, everything's there.
I bought 30 books to give to all my friends.
Yes, thank you.
So
it's
guy's a wise man. He's got a lot of information in that little noggin under his hat of his.
Well, I want to say one more thing before I go. I'm going to promote Ash, because you didn't ask me to do this, but I'm going to go back to this. Ash is building something pretty cool. His epic adventures, or whatever he's going to end up calling it, entrepreneur camp. We've talked about lots of different things, but whatever he's doing, you need to get involved in it. It's really that good. And this is coming from a guy who does some of the same stuff he's doing. So I don't feel any threat of competition here. This is a real guy doing real stuff that's really benefiting people. So if you like him more than me, go talk to him, because you don't have to come talk to me. Ash can help you, and then he knows to send you to me if that's something I can do. But go on his trips. If he invites you to a trip, you're an idiot if you don't go on the trip.
Well, I honor you. Blessed to call you a friend now. I love this thing of doing 2 podcasts and going deeper. We'll have to do the next one. I still have a list of other things I want to get in with you. So I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man.